On December 7, 1987, British Airlines Flight 1771 was hijacked for the most petty of reasons, crashing the plane and sealing the fate of all 43 passengers on board. This was not a religious terrorist attack or software glitch or weather malfunction in the plane. It was something totally, surprisingly under control of one man hell-bent on revenge. The question is, how did this happen? And more importantly, why? This is David Burke, a ticketing agent in charge of, you guessed it, rendering and coordination of passenger tickets at Pacific Southwest Airlines. David, however, was not contented with his wages. Noticing the caliber of people on the planes, David probably thought he could tip himself. He decided he was going to overcharge in-flight cocktail purchases by $70 each. So every time someone bought a cocktail, he would increase the price by $70 and pocket it. He reportedly made thousands of dollars from this alone. What a brilliant man, don't you think? You would think someone who decides to do something like this doesn't really care about losing his job. I mean, what if he's caught? Did he ever think about that? Well, it turns out that not only did David not think about being caught, but he also didn't think it was a big deal. Well, his manager had a different opinion because he was later caught and promptly fired from the job. Surprisingly, for everyone else of course except David, he saw the crime as too little of a crime for him to lose his job over. I mean, how is he going to feed his family and pay his bills? All these did David lay before his manager, Ray Thompson, as he begs to be reinstated. But it seems such crimes are unforgivable in the aviation industry, regardless of how much was involved. Also saying he was previously being investigated for involvement with a narcotics ring, there was little his manager could do. But again, David was not convinced about that and did the practical example of letting the devil use you. I mean, to full capacity. Now, pay close attention. Whenever you are fired from an airline or airport position, you are required to return all of your employee credentials with which you carried out your role in the company. These credentials may involve gadgets that allow you to bypass security checks, amongst other things. And looking back now, Pacific Airlines wished they had been a little more strict with this principle. So came Monday, December 7, 1987, David carefully followed his ex-boss Thompson on board a Pacific Southwest Airlines jet. It was Flight 1771, a daily passenger flight from Los Angeles Airport to San Francisco Airport, and had 44 people in total on board, David included. The flight time was scheduled to be just over an hour, but sadly the flight took off and never landed. Now, shockingly, David was on board that plane with a .44 Magnum revolver. But how? How did he get on a plane with a gun? Well, after being fired, David delayed in surrendering all company credentials that was supposed to be submitted. With the credentials, he was able to bypass the normal passenger security checkpoint and gained access to the plane via the locked crew door using the access code scratched above the lock. The plane took off and then David proceeded to write a message on an air sickness bag and reportedly gave it to Thompson, his manager, to read aloud. Yeah, he made the innocent man read a final message before fatally shooting him. The message read, "Hi Ray, I think it's sort of ironical that we end up like this. I asked for some leniency for my family, remember? Well, I got none and you will get none." After fatally shooting Thompson, he proceeded to kill the pilots and flight control agents and sent the plane into a dive, recorded to be faster than the speed of sound. David was no pilot and braced himself for impact with his hand still on the gun's trigger. An off-duty pilot who was on board, Douglas Otter, was recorded to have tried entering the cockpit in an attempt to get the plane out of the dive, but it was too late. By the way, Douglas Otter was the husband of Nikki St. Germain. Nikki St. Germain had lost her brother in PSA's only other fatal crash, a September 25, 1978 collision of PSA Flight 182. So now her husband also suffered the same fate as her brother, as both were in the only two fatal crashes of PSA's history at that time. It's hard to explain why things like this happen. Anyways, after Douglas's failed attempt, the plane struck solid ground and disintegrated instantly. The disintegration was so rapid that only 11 of the 44 people on board were ever identified after the crash. And all this could have been prevented at not one but at least 2 different times in David's life. Remember, David was a suspect in a drug smuggling ring that was bringing cocaine from Jamaica to Rochester via the airline? Well, he was never charged, and this gave him the opportunity to relocate to Los Angeles to avoid future suspicions. Some former girlfriends of David, neighbors, and law enforcement officials also described him as a violent man. He reportedly had around 7 kids from 4 different women and was never married. Several laws were passed after the crash, including a law that required immediate seizure of all airline and airport employee credentials after an employee's termination. I thought as much. May all the innocent lives lost that day rest in perfect peace.